A loving man is not rude. A loving man does not have to have his way. A loving man is also not irritable. A loving man is also not resentful. A loving man rejoices with the truth. This is Toxic Masculinity Part 2. If you don't know the premise or where this is coming from, then you can go back and watch the video linked up above one of these places and check that out. And that'll sort of give you the introduction of the thoughts. It's true. There is a sense of a misdefined version of masculinity that's out there. And it doesn't just hurt women. It hurts young guys too. It hurts people like me who still think that some of these values are actually what a man is. So I'm Zach with A Quest for Greatness, where we are looking at a relationship with God from a standpoint of truth, exploring truth, looking at the practical side of an everyday life of a Christian, and showing the positives and negatives of that, and also dispelling myths. A loving man is not rude. That's where we find back in 1Corinthians chapter 13, talking about this toxic masculinity. A loving man is not rude. Instead of being unapproachable, which most of us feel like as men, we got to be, quiet and say as little as possible. And so we're unapproachable and we want everybody else to sort of fear us, or we run over other people's feelings by being rude because we got to make sure that people know how I feel and who I am and what I stand for. Or we're inconsiderate of other people. When we're rude, we can also be rude by using, and I'm guilty of this. In fact, you're going to watch a lot of these videos, and many of you that know me are going to look and be like, man, Krug struggles with that one. With this one too. One of them is guy talk. In fact, I'll get into some verses here in just a second, but guy talk is, you know what it is, where guys are kind of whispering amongst themselves. And we figure if this is a couple of guys together, not a big deal. That's part of rudeness as well when you start looking at the definition of the word, to act unbecomingly. And a root of that word is to be deformed, indecent, or unseemly. Well, Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 4, let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place. I need to work on that one as a man. We got to stop this guy talk, and that's a part of this rudeness. In Ephesians 4 and verse 29, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths. And instead, remember the opposite is found in the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So don't be rude if you want to be a man. A loving man does not have to have his way either. Men, we got to get over ourselves and thinking that we have to be the chief and we got to run the show. So really, trying to be the man and having our way is really fake leadership. We think we got to go in, we're going to tell our wives what to do, and we're going to tell the kids what to do. And I've been down this road too. We're going to tell everybody when we're in charge or given some sort of title, it's that my way or the highway thing. And it totally shuts down our ears because we're not good listeners. A loving man does not have to have his own way. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 24, let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. How about 1 Corinthians 10:33? Paul said, not seeking my own advantage. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 3, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit. And the opposite again from the Beatitudes is Matthew chapter 5 and verse 5. Blessed are the meek. Remember, if you don't know what meekness is, it is power that is kept under control. It's Jesus is the definition of that. Power that's kept under control. So I don't always have to have my way. It doesn't have to be my idea. It doesn't have to be my say-so. And that's being a loving man. A loving man is also not irritable. My kids will be watching this and say, if they watch this, they better watch this channel. Anyway, my kids will be watching this and say, we remember when you were really, really irritable. I really had to work on this one. But irritable, instead of going off, instead of losing my temper. Men are bad about this. We are impatient. A loving man, a loving person is not irritable or easily irritated. You think of Numbers 20 in verses 10 through 12, where Moses and Aaron again are dealing with these people, these faithless people who are complaining about not having water. This is the second time. And God tells Moses, I want you to go over and speak to the rock instead of striking it this time. And so here's how he does it. He goes over and he's frustrated, and I get it, I understand it. But in sort of this little irritable fit, he says, "Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock. And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. And in Psalm 106, it says he spoke rashly with his lips. That's when we lose ourselves, lose our minds, lose the ability to think through what we're saying. And it's not a loving way to live. Proverbs 14 and verse 17 says, a man of quick temper acts foolishly. And I'm proof of that. And the reverse of this is Matthew chapter 5 and verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, not the ones who have to say something back or get the last word in or easily irritated. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. A loving man is also not resentful, meaning like, well, I ain't gonna forget that, or can you believe what so-and-so has done to me, or how dare you. Not resentful, meaning literally it does not take into account a wrong suffered. In Matthew, hold on just a second, Matthew chapter 5 verses 10 and 11, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, because we're being kind and being good and being loving and so forth, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you for lots of different reasons. There are growth opportunities, there are opportunities to grow our patience as well and other things. But to be resentful and to hold things against people is anti-God. He doesn't do that. He doesn't operate that way. He is merciful. He is gracious. He puts up with me every day and you as well. What about 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 14? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy. Instead of focusing on what's been done to you as a man and making sure that you don't forget and that you hold it against them and you maybe retaliate, honor Jesus. Focus on Christ instead. And it says, be prepared to make that defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect, not in that resentful manner. Finally, a loving man. This is your 10th point now between these two videos. Last one. When you're looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 13, I believe it's 4 through 6. A loving man rejoices with the truth instead of what's wrong. Instead of seeing what we can get away with. Instead of sneaking around. Men are bad about this. My wife used to say that as a younger version of me, that I always had to be getting away with something. I always had to have some secret to be getting into something. Well, it's usually you sneaking around because you're doing stuff you shouldn't be doing that other people don't approve of. And a real man, a loving man, rejoices in truth, always wants to be righteous and living in truth. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 9, we need to learn to be this way. Let love be genuine. Hate or abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Instead of seeing what we can get away with or trying to be men and we're macho and we want to be that rebellious type. No, just do good no matter what other people think, no matter how unmanly it may look. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 6 says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Those people are going to be filled. And that's a great way to sort of conclude this here in just this one thought by saying, this being filled, you are never going to be satisfied as a man by trying to be all these things that are opposite of this list, the instead ofs that I mentioned in both of these videos. You try to live that life of manliness, it's always going to be empty. You may get respect for a little while until you drop out of favor or whatever with the people that you are wanting their attention so much. It's only going to last for a short time. This is the man that God recognizes. This will make you like Jesus, who was the real man. All right, it's that time again. Question of the video. Do you know some men who need to see this video? That's not the real question. Are there other aspects about this toxic version of masculinity that I didn't think of or came up with that you could add to it as well? Comment below. Get involved, please. All right, let me just give you a few things here as we wrap this up. The effects, the spiritual effects. I just made a list of them here. If we don't get this thing right as far as men, we don't behave the way God wants us to, if we aren't the loving men that God has designed us to be, I have seen it split congregations where people can't get along anymore. And it's usually almost always about somebody's opinions, and it's a bunch of men that can't get along. I've actually seen men in these meetings sometimes come near to blows because some of these problems I've mentioned in these two videos. You have unguided families by men who are selfish and self-serving. You have a hierarchy created in power and acceptance because certain people aren't accepted for this outside definition of what being a man is or masculinity is. You have this hierarchy and power, and some people don't feel as important because other men need to show off and be the man. It keeps others feeling less valuable and powerful. It keeps women from being effective because we sort of cast off their roles and they're not men, and so in this patriarchal sort of mentality in society that they don't matter as much and they have sort of the secondary role and secondary work. It raises boys to be cool instead of being men. I know a lot of men right now with regret who are fathers who were more interested in their sons being cool instead of being good or being men in these definitions. And now they wish they could go back and redo it. It keeps or it chases away potential believers because we are not modeling ourselves after Jesus. It leaves people going without because of a lack of compassion. And so we have all these excuses as to why we don't help people. It keeps people unlearned and ignorant, especially us as men, and it leads others astray. It keeps them from being who God wants them to be. So this is what it means in a sense of toxic masculinity from a spiritual aspect, and we want to work away from those definitions, go back to places like 1Corinthians 13, make sure I'm defined by that. So glad that you watched these videos. Hopefully you've caught part 1. This has been part 2 of toxic masculinity. What I want you to do now is simply subscribe down below if you haven't already. Hit the like button if this video helped you, and also hit that notification bell. That'll let you know should be every Monday morning and Thursday morning when we release new content, and we'll keep you up to date where the channel is going. Also, comment below, add your comments, add suggestions, add what you agree or disagree with, and get involved with the channel. Help us grow this thing and make it better for you.